Hey everyone, I'm a little bit slow off the mark with this. Reason 13 dropped today, and there's no shortage of really good content out there, tutorials, reviews, rundowns, especially Ryan Harlin's videos on the Reason Studios channel, which I'd highly recommend if you just want to know how things work. So I'm not going to retread any ground there. I just basically want to give my sort of feedback and my opinions on this update, things that I like, things that I was hoping to see, things that I'd like to see in potential future versions, and kind of where this leaves me in terms of, you know, what my main environment is going to be going forward as I sort of dust off the instruments and get back into music again this year. So it's not going to be so much a tutorial thing. I'm not going to go through how to use everything, but just kind of quickly go through the features and give my feedback on them. First of all, I like the new look. I know it was a bit of a contentious thing that we lost the blue theme. We now just have light and dark, but I think the new dark theme looks really, really good. And we've got these new view tabs at the top here. You can kind of switch between your different views and combine them. I still find myself just using the F keys because I normally just work in a single view at a time. The new device palette, I have mixed feelings. I really appreciate the tags. It's really cool being able to just say, you know, I want to look at all of my keys or all of my drum plugins. The other thing I found myself doing a lot of times was overlooking rack extensions that I forgot I'd bought. I mean, if I just turn off all the filters, you'll get a sense of how much stuff I have. So I would end up just going to like one or two reverbs that I know I like, and I'd completely forget the rest. Now with the new tags, it does kind of encourage me to use things that I wouldn't normally use before. So that's really, really cool. You will notice that some of the categorization is off. So for instance, the neural DSP stuff is showing up as reverb for some reason, maybe because there's reverb in it, I don't know. But the tags that are built into VST plugins, by and large, they're not very useful. But this is not a Reason issue. This is on the developer to implement the tags properly. So you would get this same thing happen potentially in other DAWs as well. But certainly if you filter this down to just your rack extensions, you know, you get really clean results. I just want to look at reverbs. I just want to look at distortions, synthesizers, and so on. So that works really well. Now, favorites list is quite a hot issue over on Reason Talk, over on Facebook, all over social media. You can no longer organize devices and VSTs how you'd like. Now, tags get you a long way to where you want to go in terms of finding rack extensions and first-party devices. So on that front, not too big of an issue. When it comes to VSTs, it's a whole other story. As I said, the tags aren't implemented properly on all VSTs, and you could very easily find yourself just having to do a lot of scrolling. You have to go through and set up thumbnails for everything, so it's not ideal. One thing I will say is that we have finally got the ability to option or alt-click to collapse and expand device vendors. So that can save a little bit of time if you know that you want to go to native instruments, for example. It's easier to just go straight down to the vendor and then drag in, you know, contact, machine, whatever. So that certainly saves a lot of time compared to having all of these open by default or having to like collapse and expand all of them individually one by one. Took us a long time to get here, but you know, we finally got it. So that's definitely good. But certainly device favorites lists, you know, I think it's pretty much essential that they come back in some way or another. There is a workaround, and I will talk about that a little bit, but ultimately, you know, we don't want to be doing things that are too kind of hacky or that require a lot of manual time and manual setup to do if, you know, the aim of this is to be working faster and making more music and stuff. So a little bit disappointed that this was kind of not thought about for 13.0, but the kind of feedback from Reason on this seems to be that, you know, they've heard the concerns loud and clear, and as far as I know, they're already looking into solutions to, you know, how to re-implement this in a future version. So I guess the flagship feature of 13 is the new browser, and it's a little bit of a love-hate thing for some people. Certainly when I first tried it out in the beta, I was like, nah, I don't like this. They've made a mistake. It's now a floating window, so it's not docked. You can't dock it. You can obviously resize it. You can make it a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger, or a lot bigger if you want. But the more I used it, the more I came to appreciate it. And the biggest thing for me is that you can get ideas going just using the content from the factory sound banks. All of your Reason Plus packs are also tagged and discoverable as well. So I was sort of finding myself just making things using nothing but the built-in sounds and Reason before even looking to go to VSTs, which I think is pretty cool. So like for instance, this idea here, I was doing this on my testing laptop, which is also my kind of like day job laptop. But I was just going through picking tags, and I think it sounds pretty cool. But the nice thing is that if you want to swap out, say, a drum sample, you can just go in here. I've already kind of got my tag set, but I could search for like drum samples that are bass drums and, I don't know, let's say warm. And then as you preview these, they're kind of being changed in the patch in real time, so you can kind of play the song and hear straight away how they fit into the mix. And obviously that goes for anything as well. So if I wanted a different bass patch, I could load this up. It's actually remembered the last search that I did, which was that I was looking for synth basses. And I believe that should be the case for other instruments as well. So I was searching for synths that are plucky and arpeggiated. So that's another nice thing about the browser, is that it remembers your tag or search session. So you can kind of go back into a project, months later, and you can kind of keep digging through the sounds that you were originally looking for. So yeah, in that regard, I think it works really well. But yeah, as I say, I think the fact that it has these different modes of operation, depending on whether you're looking for samples or patches or effects, or you're importing audio and stuff, it's not intuitive straight away, I think, for new users, but it is something that you kind of, you do get to grips with it the more you work. So for instance, rather than just opening the browser with Command F every time, or pressing the browser button, if I know that I want to go and create an instrument and start playing it and changing patches straight away, I would do Command I for instrument. And then whatever my filters are, so I say keys, airy, long, click a patch, it's instantly made. It's got browse focus, and then I can change the patch in real time. So that's definitely, I think once you get used to that way of working, so you're not always opening the browser, selecting patches, nothing happens, you press create, the browser goes away. Yeah, it's worth just kind of taking time to kind of understand how these different modes work. And you can also get to these as well by using the add device. So you get add instrument, that will do the same thing. So you can just press on a patch and you're straight in. Again, I think this came up during testing as well, is that it's a little bit of a paradigm change for Reason, in that you now have something that, depending on which mode you're in, you need to confirm or you need to cancel. Sometimes it's close and create, sometimes it's import and cancel. So yeah, again, I would recommend watching Ryan's video on that, because I think he does a really good job of explaining it. Just understanding that, there's different modes or different methods of entering the browser depending on what you want to do. It's definitely going to work better for you. Now, in terms of the favorites list workaround that I was talking about, now obviously I don't have any favorites list set up on here because it's a brand new machine, fresh install Reason 13. You could make a favorites list here, and you could call this, say, acoustic drums. Now, as it stands, if I wanted to put something like Toontrack's Superior Drummer, what I want to be able to do is click and drag that and put it onto acoustic drums, but I can't. Or I would want to be able to right click it and, create a new favorites list or add to an existing one. You can't do that at the moment. What you can do is you could drag this in, let's close the browser, and just save it in its default state, or whatever you want the default state to be. And that's going to take you to the user library area by default. So in here, you could make a new folder called init patches, and then just give this a name and call it Superior Drummer 3. Now in your browser, you can go to user library, and it's going to show it because I'm in flat view, but if you were in tree view, you could obviously go into that folder that you just made, drag Superior Drummer 3 VST preset to acoustic drums, and now that's available in a favorites list to create. You can do that for all the devices in Reason. Now, for me to do that for everything I own, that's like an afternoon's work, you know. So like I say, I'm not too big of a fan of these things that kind of require a lot of manual work, especially when that's time that you want to be spending making music, you know. But for the time being, it is a workaround. I should also say that not all instruments have the ability to save and load patches. So for instance, if we look for the Jackbox plugins, which I really like, they're good emulations of some classic drum machines, they don't have a patch section. So in that case, you would have to right click and combine, and then you could save that again in your init patches folder and call it Jackbox 808. Go to your browser, go to user library, and then say, you know, we can make a new favorites list and call it vintage drum machines and drag that in. I mean, favorites being what they are, you know, you might not need to make init patches for everything. You might just want to do this for the things that you know that you want to have access to in those lists. But, you know, again, there is a solution coming, so I hear, but for now, that's kind of the way to get around that. Now, obviously, there's some other new stuff here. We've got the Ripley space delay, the polytone morphing synth, stereo tool, sidechain tool, gain tool. I'm not going to talk about what these do, at least not in this video. There's plenty of great stuff on that already, and again, I'd recommend you check out Ryan's videos on those because he does a fantastic job of explaining how they work. I will say I think they're fantastic devices. They look great, they sound great, they've got that real sort of like premium first-party Reason Studios feel and sound to them. And arguably, you know, you could say that the Polytone, that's easily like a £90 synth. Ripley, that's probably pushing up towards, you know, 50, 60, 70 pounds worth. The utilities, maybe 15, 20 pounds each. And then you're up to the, you know, the upgrade price. So you can kind of explain the cost of the upgrade just on the devices alone, never mind the tagging, the browser. There's other workflow features as well. I say features, I'd say adjustments. So, you know, they've moved the F8 tool for note functions and audio editing. They now live in this kind of new editor pane down the bottom here. So it's a lot more in line with something that you get in something like Live or Cubase. We've also got like redesigned context menus for things like transposition, note lengths, randomization. So there's some nice kind of adjustments. I'm not going to say new features. They're features we already had, but they've been moved into places that are easier to find. And you may find that those are things that make working in Reason, you know, on the daily, it's going to speed up your workflow. I'm going to say at this point, I'm not sure if what I needed was more devices. And I made this comment on another video, I think it was Stock Music Musician, that there were kind of like 2, maybe 3 things that I was like, I really want to see these either in 13 or kind of like in the pipeline coming. And if not, I might sort of think about moving to a different environment to work in. And the biggest of those for me, 100% is track folders. So I find this with Reason projects. I can't show you because none of my projects are loading on the new laptop, new sample locations, all the rest of it. But when the projects get really big, they get big. And they become very vertical. It kind of gets hard to make big changes to the arrangement. And you really have to be on top of it with things like your track order, coloring, all the rest of it. Something like Cubase, I think, has fantastic track folder implementation. It just works on the sequencer view, so it's nothing to do with track routing, audio routing, or anything like that. You can just organize things into folders, you can solo them. You've got this kind of top level clip that brings all of the sub clips along with it. You can solo, mute, all the rest of it. So, you know, if this was like a big trailer project and you've got like hits, whooshes, booms, all of your different string and brass articulations and stuff, you need to package those into folder tracks. Like there's literally no other way to work. And that was a really big thing for me. Another thing that I was really hoping for, it's not a particularly exciting feature, but it's MIDI note chase. And what this means is it's the ability to hear long notes if they're played from anywhere other than the note start. So as an example, I have this kind of brass swell. So that's fine, but if I was to then seek to the middle of this, I don't hear anything. I have to go back to the beginning every time. So if I wanted to mix the song and hear that, I would always have to go to the beginning of the long notes and let the full 4 bars play. Which again, you know, over the length of working with a project, those things, they add up, they take time. Another thing that I was also really hoping for, again, it's a very small feature, but it's the ability to hear notes as you nudge them with the arrow keys. So if we use polytone as an example, you know, what I might do sometimes is just sequence or draw in a row of notes and then kind of step through them and say, you know, I want that up an octave, down an octave, whatever. But you can't hear them while you're doing it. You can hear them if you click and drag. But as someone that's had a couple of bouts of RSI, you don't want to be using the mouse too often. Now doing the same thing in Cubase, if I was to, let's just draw in a note, I can hear it in semitones, I can hear it in octaves, I can duplicate. And I realize, you know, this may just be a personal thing, maybe not everybody works that way, but it's just those little things that I think over time, you know, they stack up. Another thing as well is the ability to just move tracks and have the order of them updated everywhere in the sequencer. So for instance, if I was to take this wobbly pad, move it down to the bottom, if I go into the mixer, it's in the same place in the mixer as it is in the arranger, whereas in Reason, you have these sort of three different views. You've got the mixer, you've got the rack, and you've got the arranger. If I click and drag an instrument, so it goes polytone, contact, if I look in the mixer, it still says contact, polytone. If I look in the rack, it still says contact, polytone. What I would need to do is select them, right click, select, sort. Now it's the same. Again, sometimes you do want to be able to have those in different orders, but you know, it's just those little quality of life things where it's like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you could enable an option so that you only have to move them in one place and they move everywhere. So those are some of the things that I guess I was maybe hoping to see. Definitely things that I would like to see in future versions of Reason. And I understand that kind of the wish lists that everyone has, you know, they're going to be hugely subjective. Everyone's going to have their own ideas of what's important. For me personally, I would say Reason is like 6 quality of life features away from me being able to say, yeah, I could work in this like forever. A couple of other things in there, things like repitch time stretch mode, which is really good for kind of working with breakbeats and drum loops and things like that. There's quite a few things, but I don't want to get into them. So yeah, that's kind of just my feedback of where Reason 13 is at the moment. There's some really, really great stuff in there. As I say, I'm going to continue to use it. I have a lot of stuff tied up in Reason, and I do find a lot of things about it are really, really fun and inspiring to work with. And I always recommend people to try it out, because I think even if you're quite set in your ways, it is a very fun, creative environment to dive into. In terms of where that leaves me, you know, where I sort of want to make a permanent home, it's probably going to be Cubase 13 for now. Just again, because of the limited time I have, I want to start building up templates, presets, getting organized, and just being able to work faster. And I'm not sure if I want to do that in an environment where I'm kind of forever waiting for that next thing to come that's going to like really make me want to stay. But overall, you know, I'm going to say I really appreciate that Reason 13, they have made it a sequencer and browser focused experience. It kind of shows that they're still looking at the standalone application as a thing. A lot of people were worried that the Reason Rack plugin would kind of be like the death knell of the DAW. Clearly, I don't think that's the case. So yeah, so I'm going to use it. I'm going to enjoy it. Probably going to start making the transition over to Cubase, especially for bigger projects. But I do also want to do some cool videos on some of the things you can do with Polytone. The new sidechain tool is really cool. And a lot of that stuff will carry across to other DAWs as well, because as I say, you can take the Reason Rack plugin and you can use it in whatever you want. You can use it in Live, Logic. It works really, really well in Logic, especially for players, which are like Reason's MIDI effects. But yeah, I think I've rambled about that enough. It's just my thoughts, just my feedback. I'm sure there's plenty of them going around, but I've tried to do it in a bit of a non-clickbaity, fair and balanced way. So I'm definitely going to be doing more Reason videos. It's going to feature on my streams. I'm in the process of kicking off some weekly streams over on Twitch, working on some new material with Dan Tompkins. So that's going to be really fun. Again, almost certainly it's going to be Cubase, but there will be some Reason action in there as well because I use the plugin a lot. So yeah, I'm interested to see where things go, and also just to see what people make of this update. And yeah, I think that's it for now. So I'll catch you guys in the next video.